Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, April the 20th, 2023. Today there is an eclipse. It's a solar eclipse, and all solar eclipses, by definition, are new moons. But it doesn't work the other way around. Not all new moons are solar eclipses. So let me explain the difference. Now, this is not a great way of doing it, but I'm taking two 9-volt batteries. When you've got a new moon, it means that measured on the x-axis, measured horizontally, the sun, let's say the red thing is a red battery is the sun, and the Duracell battery is the moon, and it means they're in the same place. But they can be like this. They don't have to cover each other on a new moon. On an eclipse, there has to be an eclipse. The moon has to eclipse the sun. So that is the difference. And that is the difference in terms of power. New moons happen every month, and they're usually pretty uneventful. When that new moon is an eclipse, when the sun is eclipsed by the moon, when the moon crosses the sun, then we have a more powerful effect. And technically, what we have today is an annular total eclipse of the sun, and it takes place in the last degree of Aries. And so I want to consider what it means for you and what it means for the world. I specifically want to focus on Europe, because I think in terms of Europe there is reason to think there is reason to think it's a major one. So that's what I'm going to be looking at now. So let's look at this new moon. Here is the chart of the new moon eclipse. It's set for April the 20th, 2023. This one is set for London, so if you're in London, that's going to be at 5:12 a.m. The astrological eclipse is at 5:12 a.m. and you can see, by definition, the sun and the moon are in exactly the same place. So what's it going to feel like? Well, new moons tend to be more fortunate than full moons. The new moon is about a new beginning. It's about planting the seeds of a new project. And as I think I've said before, it's a good idea to be quite secretive. So if you've got a new plan, something you want to put into action, don't tell people unless it's really necessary, because new moons take place in the darkness, because at the time of a new moon you can't see anything in the night sky. At least you can't see the moon in the night. You can't see the moon in the night sky. That's the definition of a new moon. That's why, in terms of military campaigns, traditionally the new moon is a good time for offensives, because the enemy can't see you. Of course, with modern technology and infrared and satellites and all that kind of stuff, that advantage has somewhat been eroded. So in a general sense, it's good, because it means we can have a new start. So as far as this particular new moon is concerned, we perhaps need to consider some of the aspects. So regardless of where you live, you'll notice that the sun and moon is exactly square Pluto. So I think for many of us, this new moon could be quite intense. And I'm talking not about just today on Thursday, April the 20th. I'm talking here in this video about the longer term effect of the new moon, how it's going to impact you over the next 2 weeks between now and the full moon, and even further to the end of the month. And in certain situations, a new moon eclipse can have an effect which lasts much longer than that. But I will be particularly with, I think, reference to the European Union. But so how will it affect you if a new moon is square Pluto? Many of us are going to feel more secretive than usual. We're going to feel that we've got secrets that we don't really want to reveal. And in terms of emotions, it could be quite an intense time. And I don't actually think it's a very good time for over displays of warmth and feeling. Okay, you might say that the moon and Jupiter are making a conjunction to Jupiter. Sorry, the moon and Jupiter are in conjunction, but the moon is now separating from that conjunction, and the moon is by definition a conjunction with the sun, in conjunction with the sun. Plus, the only traditional water planet in a water sign is Saturn, which is not great. So, over the next couple of weeks, don't plan on being overly emotional. From a romantic point of view, I kind of have my doubts that it's going to be the greatest lunar cycle in the world, unless you and your partner really, really trust each other. So, I think that is going to be a problem. So it's not a great new moon because of that square to Pluto, and also the fact that this new moon is in the last degree of Aries. The sun is very strong in Aries, and the moon is a bit burnt out, being conjunct a sun which is so strong. And so it's a feeling that although new moons are about new beginnings, because it's in the last degree of Aries, it's a new beginning, but it's an ending. And at the time, over the next few weeks, we may feel that it's more of an ending from a beginning, because if you want to move to the next stage, you've got to say goodbye to lots of different things. So that is certainly something to consider. Now, as far as what's going to happen in the world is concerned, what astrologers do is they set up a chart, like a new moon or a full moon or whatever, for a location. So this chart, for example, I've set it up for Westminster, England. And so I'm looking at how this new moon might affect the UK, because Westminster is the seat of government in Britain, so it's particularly important. You doing this relocation thing is a bit hit and miss, but looking at this chart, I don't see anything particularly dramatic. There's the ascendant, the descendant, the midheaven, the highest point, the lowest point of a chart. There's nothing there. I don't think it's particularly important for the UK. Now, when I looked at the full moon, last full moon, I had a feeling that it might affect Berlin. It didn't really affect Berlin, but I suppose the full moon wasn't really an eclipse. So what happens if we relocate this chart to Berlin? So, same chart, but we can see that Mars is on the IC. Now that might be important. Mars is a planet of aggression, anger. Maybe this is about political problems. And this Mars on the IC is not just about Berlin. Let's have a look at the whole. I can show you the line of the European line. This is where it is relative to. There is the Mars on the IC line, that red line. You see it goes through Berlin, goes through Western Czech Republic, goes through Western Austria, goes through Rome, Sicily, then goes on through Africa. So I'm not really going to look at Africa, but in terms of Europe, this part of Europe could be. There could be, a lot of anger. Maybe Prague, Berlin, Rome, Ljubljana is here. So Central and Eastern Europe could be affected by, or certainly Central Europe could be affected by this eclipse. We should also look at other planets on this. Now, if you look, if we look at the new moon, and let's reset it for somewhere else, our favourite place, Kiev. Let's reset the new moon for Kiev. And we see that Pluto is exactly on the midheaven. There's the midheaven, 29, 22, and Pluto is at 0, 20. So Pluto is half a degree off the midheaven in Kiev, and so that impacts government. It impacts the head of government. So, okay, you might say this is a time where, after the 20th, maybe this is a time where Ukraine has to launch its big offensive. But it's not just about offensives. It's about the government and power struggles, and what's going on behind closed doors. And I think that eclipse suggests that something important might be going on there that the media certainly isn't picking up in its entirety. Now, that Pluto on the midheaven in Kiev picks up on something else. Now, look at the position of Pluto, 0 degrees 20 Aquarius. Now, let's look at Zelensky's chart. He has Mars, the planet of aggression, at 0, 15 Leo. So Pluto at the time is on the midheaven in the new moon set for Kiev, and that Pluto is opposition Zelensky's Mars. And over the next few weeks, I think in fact, just over a month later, Mars he'll have his Mars return. Mars in the sky will move to Zelensky's own Mars. And so I think there is a hint there that with this new moon, I think Zelensky has to be really careful, and in the government in Kiev, I think some major things are going to be going on, and I don't think it's just about the offensive, or maybe the offensive will never happen. But from what I gather, the Ukrainians somehow have to cobble something together. Now, as far as Europe is concerned, I'm quite interested in the Metonic cycle. Now, the Metonic cycle is the cycle by which lunations repeat, and it's 19 years. In fact, it's exactly 19 years. So if we go back to the new moon, I'll set it for Berlin. There would be an eclipse at 29 degrees Aries, exactly 19 years earlier. So, April the 20th, 2023, there was another eclipse 19 years before on, I think, April the 19th, 2003. Sorry, April the 19th, 2004. So, this is the eclipse. April the 19th, 2004. There you see, pretty much exact same degrees. Now, I've set it for Bratislava in Slovakia. Now, the reason I've set it for Bratislava in Slovakia is because actually that's where I was on April the 19th, 2004. And, this was a very special time for Slovakia. And a lot of other countries like Poland and Hungary and the Czech Republic, because on May the 1st, 2004, which would have been just under 2 weeks later, they joined the European Union. Really, really important. When I crossed the border just before then, Slovakia was not a member of the European Union. When I was in Slovakia there, I was walking by the Danube, seeing the EU flags waving expectantly, and yes, it was a really big deal. But now, 19 years later, there's another new moon eclipse, and I'm thinking that there's going to be a resonance between this eclipse and the eclipse 19 years before. And I think it's going to particularly influence those new members of the European Union, which makes me think it's not just a 1 day wonder, 2 week wonder, 1 month wonder. I think that this eclipse is, in some respects, the real end of the big adventure. I think that events going on, perhaps over the summer, in the months following this eclipse, are going to really suggest that the dream is over. We already have civil unrest, but it's going to get worse. And obviously, there's something, I think, also with this eclipse suggests that something very big is about to happen in the Ukraine, which may not necessarily be in Ukraine's favor. And that's all going to feed into the problem. So overall, that's my impression of the eclipse. I think that on a personal level, I don't think you really have to worry too much about this new moon eclipse. It's a new beginning. Secrecy is important. Great time for, it's as with every new moon, it's a time to start new projects, but also because it's in the last degree of Aries, you must be ready to say goodbye to the past. If you want to benefit from the future, you've got to distance yourself from the past. However, from a broader global perspective, I don't think this new moon is very fortunate, and I don't think it's very fortunate. I don't think it's very fortunate if you are, say, a European politician. Europe looks really bad, and I know everyone says it's bad in Europe, but however bad you think it's going to be, it could always get worse.